Hello everyone, my name is Austin Alonge and my partner's name is David Salter. Within Susan Cain's book, which is titled Quiet, we chose to analyze Chapter 9. Chapter 9 is titled, When Should You Act More Extroverted Than You Really Are? Before jumping into our chapter, we'd like to point out the fact that the extrovert ideal is on the rise. It is taking very little time for it to pervade our culture. Cain points out that we often undervalue introverts as a result. She adds that we lose in doing so. To put the introvert and extrovert ideals in perspective, we like to show this video which gives a brief synopsis of the different characteristics seen within the two. As you can see, the talkative extrovert is far more social and enthusiastic than the shy, antisocial introvert. Now that you have a better idea of how the two differ, we'd like to introduce Brian Little, who Susan Cain references quite often in Chapter 9. Brian Little is a psychology lecturer at Harvard University. Little is strongly introvert, but poses as a prime example of how introverts can act as extroverts. The beginning of our chapter focuses on the person-situation debate. In light of this, I'd like to pose a question as to if fixed personality traits really exist, or do they shift according to the situation at hand. Brian Little is a proponent of the personal side of the debate. As we previously explained, Little is a strong introvert. In spite of that, he resembles extrovert characteristics as he lectures. People like Little, who defend the person side of the debate, believe there to be personality traits that exist that shape our lives in profound ways, and that are based on psychological mechanisms. Proponents of the situational side, however, believe generalizations to be misleading. Proponents also believe that social masks are our true selves, and there are no such thing as personality traits. Situationalists prevailed for decades once Walter Michael published his piece called Personality and Assessment. Since then, however, interactionism took over. Interactionism reveals that both factors contribute to who we are. Throughout my professional career, I've grown to support the notion of interactionism. For example, I can be very rejection sensitive. If I work on an assignment for my boss and he approves of it, I experience feelings of accomplishment and joy. I also find my personality to be more social and approachable. However, if one of my assignments were rejected, my demeanor changes. I then become frustrated and antisocial. It is in these situations I also apply knowledge gained from class. The nonverbal cues I reveal throughout such situations can be telling. I've learned from those both as a leader and as a subordinate. The chapter continues as Professor Little explains more thoroughly extroverts as opposed to introverts. Professor Little, in this section of the chapter, excelled in giving another lecture. At the end, however, he could no longer socialize. His discomfort for socialization outside of giving lectures is interesting. What makes him so comfortable up on stage, one might ask? He gives the credit to what is called the free trait theory. Susan Cain and Little believe that fixed traits and free traits coexist. According to the free trait theory, we are born with certain personality traits which mimic characteristics seen in either introverts or extroverts. Little proceeds by explaining that we can still act out of character in the service of core personal projects. To elaborate on this, introverts, like Little, are capable of acting like extroverts for the sake of work they consider important, for the people they love, or for anything they value. For example, I love hanging out with my siblings. With that being said, they love to go out publicly and socialize, whereas I prefer to stay in. In that sense, I am more introvert. However, I do go out on occasion because I know how much it means to my loved ones. Bringing yourself to doing something that is uncomfortable, however, is a battle in itself. That is where the core personal projects play a role.
Susan Cain explains that our lives are dramatically enhanced when we are involved in core personal projects that we consider meaningful, manageable, and unduly stressful. Discovering core personal projects can be difficult, however, especially for introverts. To effectively determine these projects, Cain urges people to follow 3 steps. She first urges individuals to follow joy. By going back to what you loved as a child, people are able to act out of character. Second, she stresses the need to be aware of what you enjoy. People will have more flexibility if they are passionate. Last, she urges people to realize what they desire. Once people enjoy something, they can better adjust themselves. We'd now like to show you a link that brings light to this idea. Within this page, Cain elaborates on the fact that introverts are capable of acting like extroverts for the sake of things they consider important. It is very interesting how she relates it to Shakespeare. As you can see, Shakespeare says that, "To thyself be true, and it must follow, as the night the day, thou canst not be thy false to any man." This quote just elaborates on the fact that if people act in service of love, they'll have comfort to act in any way. The previous information helps introverts act as extroverts. However, there is only so much introverts can handle. Individuals often struggle to self-present themselves. This phenomena is known as behavioral leakage. If introverts fail to self-monitor themselves, their true selves will seep out through unconscious body language. As leaders, it's important to adhere to each individual. Class materials have stressed the importance of building interpersonal relationships with colleagues along with strong forms of communication. These tactics may help prevent behavioral leakage, and they'll help leaders manage leakage more effectively. Self-monitoring can be an effective tactic for introverts looking to adjust to situational norms. However, if individuals become too uncomfortable, they can implement what's called a restorative niche. According to Cain, a restorative niche refers to the place people go in order to regain their true selves. It can be a physical place or a temporal one. My own restorative niche is a temporal one, and it involves me using my headphones to drown out the world around me. I use this in college before lacrosse games to focus and to get my adrenaline pumping. I also use it during homework or work to drown out outside noise and to help me focus on what task is at hand. As you can see in this article, the restorative niche denotes the place you go when you want to return to your true self. For the introvert, this means finding places and/or times where and when you can be by yourself, away from the stimulation of being with many other people. Similarly, the author discusses her own restorative niche, which involved taking walks between student meetings, allowing her to be with her own thoughts and to refresh herself.
We can now all easily tell that introverts and extroverts differ. We also know that even though introverts act as extroverts, it's possible they can burn themselves out. If introverts continually participate in situations that make them uncomfortable, it is possible that they could begin to dislike their job and wear themselves down. To aid in the process, it's important for people to establish an agreement with themselves and with other people. By doing this, people establish opportunities to display different characteristics, but also have time to recharge and be themselves as well. For example, within Chapter 9, Little felt himself wearing down after one of his lectures. The socialization was overwhelming. He could no longer interact with people, so he made up an excuse to leave. To avoid burnout, he locked himself in the nearest bathroom stall which help them recharge. As we previously explained, it is important for employees to establish an agreement with themselves and with others around them. There has to be a sense of awareness. What I mean by this is that employees, introverts in particular, have to know how much they can handle and make sure not to exceed that amount. It is also important for introverts to work together with extroverts. If extroverts are aware of introverts within their workplace culture and relationships benefit. For example, within my workplace, there are administrators who have the same duties. Some are extroverts, while others are introverts. In order to effectively integrate strengths and compensate for weaknesses, the workers need to learn how to work together. Both workers often co-lead staff meetings. What often happens is the introvert prepares the script and talking points while the other presents it. It's obvious that people usually perform better when they are comfortable. Introverts need to identify what makes them comfortable. They also shouldn't be afraid to ask for what they need, especially if they are surrounded by an extroverted environment.
Introverts will reach their full potential if they are able to comfortably work with their extroverted peers. Introverts need alone time to think and recharge, so extroverts need to allow an introvert to do so. Extroverts also need to listen more when an introvert speaks up because that introvert is leaving their comfort zone, so what they wish to say is important to the group or workplace. On the flip side, introverts need to leave their comfort zone more often. They can use core personal projects to develop the proper motivation to aid them in being more extroverted. Colleagues and leaders also need to realize today's workplace is comprised of a variety of people. Although extroverts have been considered stronger leaders in the past, introverts still have leadership strengths. We recommend that leaders encourage members of their team to offer their feedback on a regular basis. Giving employees a chance to provide meaningful input helps increase engagement and workplace satisfaction. If they know that you'll listen, the dialogue will continue. It's also important to audit a workplace culture. By rethinking the culture, the leaders are able to develop appropriate values and norms which benefit both extroverts and introverts. That concludes our narration for Chapter 9. We hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for listening.